Hello and welcome to the Showboys podcast. I'm Nick, and joining with me is Chad, and we are here to break down episode 6 of House of the Dragon, The Princess and the Queen. And, shout out Dad Cap always for the banging intro music. Check that out. We have the link and we have his SoundCloud link in the description of the episode. And other than that, we'll tear right into it. Chad, how are you this evening?
Yeah, rough day. Doing good.
Doing okay.
You doing all
Surviving.
right? Surviving.
Surviving. You're not Damon on vacation.
No,
Doing good?
not doing that great. No.
No. That's why I wore this shirt. I feel like Damon on vacation in
Yeah.
the Pentos,
Yeah. I really enjoy the Pentos thing there.
Yeah, it's completely separated from like everything other than like she gets a letter from Laenor
Yeah.
about the happenings. Other than that, they are completely separated on purpose from the happenings in Westeros.
Yeah. I really like that because uh it's a callback. So that guy, the Prince of Pentos there that's trying to
Mhm.
align himself with Daemon. It's a nice callback to the original series because we remember Illyrio was in Pentos, who did align himself with the Targaryens, who were housing the two,
Yeah.
exiled Targaryen children at the beginning of the show. So I thought that was super cool. There's a lot of cool callbacks in this episode.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I didn't pick up on that. That's cool. That basically that's like the Targaryen safe house over there
Yeah,
in Essos.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I like that. Might as well just kind of like clear that out of the air. So we're 10 years forward in this episode.
hmm
They make that pretty clear, and obviously I do appreciate that they do through dialogue say it at some point in every episode when we do have time jumps.
yeah,
In this episode, Laenor says it to Rhaenyra in their little spat about duty and him
hmm
wanting to go off to the bar for 3 months and party, aka go to war. But yeah, I Damon, as always, man of very few words.
yeah.
Reads a lot now these days, kind of just vacationing. They got dragons. We got to see
Vagar.
Vagar.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
Yeah, we were talking about this in episodes prior that this dragon was going to appear at some point. This is the current oldest and biggest living dragon, female dragon, also. And I knew as soon as the first shot of her on his back, his wing was
Massive.
massive, bro. I was like, that's got to be Vagar. There's no way it's not. So
Yeah,
it's
we, we
super cool to see her, and
and
she
we've talked
is,
about scaling on the dragons in terms of like getting their true scale, and like we felt like it
yeah,
was a little off at the beginning, but like I think they made it a good point. And this is what Game of Thrones is. I always think they're good at is actually adjusting over time to
yes,
things like mid-season. Like you
yeah,
saw with Game of Thrones, like they'd make corrections as they go, and they absolutely drove it home that like these things are massive.
yeah, absolutely. And this episode, man, it feels totally different than the first half of the show, does it not? Like it seemed like even the special effects were different. The dragons look way better. Now,
Hmm.
granted, we didn't get any of the panning shots except for a little bit of Dragonstone towards the end of the episode, but I thought even Dragonstone looked better than prior episodes. So it does seem like they're shifting. I don't know what it was exactly. I don't know if it was the special effects, the camera angles. I don't know what was going on in this episode. It just felt very different from the get
Well,
go.
definitely, just you bring up Dragonstone. Definitely, I think that's just them taking notes from where they can improve, right? Um, but also, if you watch the post-credit scene or post-credit bit of them talking to the showrunners talking about it, they did say they treated it much like a pilot, like a second pilot here because of how much changes, not just a 10-year jump, but also we get kind of like 4 or 5 recasts.
Yeah,
Basically, all the prior children are now adults and have children, which I
right.
think is such a cool element to do so well in a single season, let alone like a series. They did it in a single season,
Yeah.
to where we're kind of already moved on in the generational thing. We kind of have 3 definitely 3 generations, but like we have these weird overlaps where, Viserys is like grandpa,
Yeah.
but then, we get the proposed marriage of his grandchild to his son, right? With
Right. Yeah.
his
Yeah.
daughter, weird things like that. So it gets really kind of messy in terms of like how many generations we're counting here, but definitely three
Yeah.
solid generations of um, people of the same age.
Yeah, definitely. So we should definitely talk about the recasting of at least Allison and Rhaenyra and
Yeah.
how do you feel about each of them?
So I mean, the four main recastings, and maybe the only recastings, are the two Valerians, Laenor and his sister, and then Rhaenyra and Alicent. And honestly, Alicent, you have to put them side by side for me to know the difference. Like other than that, like you would think the prior actor aged like
Yeah.
5 years, five
Yeah,
or
I
10
agree.
years. So
I
like
agree. Yeah.
absolutely perfect. And my worries about Alicent's character are kind of gone.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That was handled so well. Like she looks correct.
Yep.
She doesn't look too old. She doesn't look the same, right? Which is important because we asked that earlier in the series. Like, couldn't they just age them a bit? Because Viserys, like, they aged him like a champ. Like
Right.
he looks
Yeah.
ancient. He looks
Yeah.
70 years old right now.
Yeah.
Um, Rhaenyra, I think that one I would say is like second rung to how well Alicent is. Alicent's definitely like the best, like grew up real fast there overnight in an episode. Rhaenyra is obviously a strong second. I think the biggest difference is Rhaenyra is her character, and like she's just so much edgier or like much more jaded, right? She's not
Yeah.
as fun and outgoing. She's kind of definitely warm. She's definitely weighed down by the thing she's always kind of feared, and that's like
Oh yeah.
being a mother of like three children, having to do childbirth. Like she was so
Right.
against that, and you can tell she's just like the castle life, the castle wife, mom life is just not good
Not for her.
for
Yeah.
her. Whereas Allison, she's thrived in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with you on both of those. I think this new Allison is significantly better than what we've gotten so far, both in the way her character is and this new actress. I am definitely more partial to Rhaenyra's younger actress,
Mhm.
but that being said, I understand what we had to do here. We had to age them in some way, and her character changes feel very real in the world as well. It wasn't jarring, you know what I mean? She's not the young, snippy teenager
Mhm.
anymore. She's been
Right.
through some crap. She's on her third child at the beginning of this episode. So, yeah, and I thought, I said maybe at the end of the last episode that I was leaning a little closer to shifting with Damon and Rhaenyra for our little graphic down here. But
Mhm.
after this episode, I think I'm firmly in Allison's corner currently. We'll see. There's moments in this episode where I felt like Rhaenyra was trying to offer up a hand, like trying to squash the feud between them. I
Mhm.
don't know if she was doing it with a whole heart or if she was like backhandedly doing it, but that made me a little bit more partial to her. I'm like, okay, well, she's maybe not the bitch in this situation. You know what I mean? Allison really
Right.
comes across in the episode as a bitch through the whole thing. And once we got to the end of this episode and I saw who I think is going to be coming back, at least from prior episodes, it was like, yeah, these two together, man, I'm fully team Hightower currently.
Yeah, I figured that's how I was going to sway for you, and yeah, and that's going to be the tough thing, because very subtly, you know, Allison's kind of like just the kind of the Cersei, right? She's the queen, and it's just her way or the highway, and she's on to a lot of things.
Hmm.
And then you have Rhaenyra seemingly trying to make it work, but are otherwise problems she directly creates. So
Right.
like there's an issue where it's like, who do I side with? Technically, Allison's right, but Rhaenyra's better about it. Um, but then you take those two out of it, and then you look at what's around them, right? And so you have Allison, who is really just putting on the bitch face and has good intention. Whereas like Varys or Varys, is that it? Is that him?
Viserys,
No, no,
the
no,
king.
no, Strong.
It's
Littlefinger too.
yeah, it's I just saw this Laris, I think, with
Laris,
an
it's an
L.
L.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's Varys, but with an L. It's
you're right.
Laris. Um, so yeah, Laris though, and this is like her shock at the end is like she has these wishes and ambitions and like how she wants things, and like here's a person that's going to execute them in a very like Cersei tone, which
Yes.
makes her not Cersei, right? She's definitely not Cersei, though she plays the queen part, which Cersei always did. But here's Laris, who is the very will do anything, to kind of work his way through. And then you have Rhaenyra, who trying to make it work and all these things, but you have things like her lover, Strong, making a scene of things because he can't, control his temper, and it's just like this lie that's just kind of out in the open, and it's like, well, that doesn't help the situation either.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the Strong family make a huge impact on this episode,
Yes. Big
for
time.
just being introduced last episode. So that's something to make sure people follow along with, that that moment when I guess the big strong brother went in and grabbed Rhaenyra out of the crowd off the
Yeah.
dance floor. Like, I guess
Yeah.
that was left an impact because
Yeah,
like they
it
hooked
did.
up not too long after.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's cool. Like I said, man, when we first saw this Gimp dude at the beginning, I can't maybe episode 2 during the hunt, whatever episode that was, I thought for sure that this guy was going to be some sort of schemer because he's, like,
Hmm.
sitting in with all the people that are gossiping. He just has a very Varys Littlefinger vibe going on, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
especially and it's funny because I think it's even spelled Varys is spelled with, if you take the L and replace or take
Yeah.
the V out and replace it with an L, it's the same spelling.
So
And
I
he
mess it
has
up
a
all the time.
bug as a
Yeah.
icon, which is, Varys was known as the spider. This guy is known as the I don't know what that's supposed to be, a bee?
It's like a beetle.
Beetle? Yeah. So, yeah, I love his character. I think that Alicent really comes across like Cersei in this episode multiple times,
Yes.
especially in her discussion with her son. She comes across very, very Cersei. And even though she's I think this is going to be her tipping point this episode, where she sees that if she needs something done, it can be done. She's shocked that it got done, right? Because she didn't necessarily ask for this to happen at the end of the episode. So she's a little shocked, but I think that's going to be the tipping point for her character to not really care about the shock value anymore and
Hmm.
just try to forward her agenda. So major, major Littlefinger and Cersei vibes in this episode for sure.
Yeah, and two things there. Like, first thing is, the way he was like, when the queen makes a wish, like, I deliver. He had definitely the faceless man like
Yeah.
tone. Like, he sounded like that's something that guy would say
Yeah.
from Game of Thrones. But also in terms of like definitely like this is definitely like a new pilot, and we kind of just got the quick setup, and then everything's gonna unravel from here. Because we have Allison, who historically does have that shock value, that innocence to her, where she's like, "Well, holy crap! Like, I didn't expect all this to happen." Like, or like, "Dad, I can't believe like you pulled all these little strings and just all this stuff happened that I didn't really intend to."
Yeah.
So this was kind of like probably her last moment of behaving that way, where she was like, "Laris, I can't believe you did this." And then like, I think that power factor is going to click after
Yeah.
this. Like, she can't
Absolutely.
walk back from it.
Yeah.
Um, but the same thing for Rhaenyra, where we have a Rhaenyra kind of like, you know, you she's kinda really stupid in this episode for thinking that, obviously her Targaryen traits are recessive in the females, but, dominant in the males. Because Viserys, like, pumps out blonde-haired children all
Right.
day. She
Yeah.
can't manage to get one off,
Yeah.
so just something so apparent with 3 children that look just like, Mr. Strong here,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Harwin, um and at the end of the episode, we get that moment where she kind of just says, "I'm done with the bullshit."
Yep.
And she's not going to play the like, "Oh, I'm going to do whatever I want and everyone's just going to be fine because I'm the heir. I'm the king's daughter, blah, blah, blah." She kind of just sheds that off at the end of the episode. So I think for both those characters, we get that last moment of their old selves.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And I, I really, really enjoy the what we're building towards here. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like this episode builds towards a lot
Yes.
moving forward because we get multiple new characters that are I would assume become very big characters and kind of balances out the dragon thing that we were discussing in
Hmm.
earlier episodes because we didn't know that these children exist and they have dragons. So it's definitely balancing things out for the coming war. But I do think we're going to start moving quicker and quicker here. We only got 4 more episodes left, right?
Yeah, but there's gonna be another season.
Yeah, there is, but I mean, you're gonna have to pop this war off in this
Yeah.
season. Like, there's no way they're not going to at least start it, right?
Right.
And yeah, I'm super excited. I know that I think unfortunately we're getting more time jumps with new actors again in this first season because I've seen screenshots of coming episodes. So
Mm.
you know, they've done really well with the time jump so far,
Oh yeah.
especially this one. This is the most jarring. This is a 10-year time jump, right? And I think they did a great job with it. Like it feels great. The only thing that I wish we got a little bit more backstory on is like at the current moment, it just seems like Allison is this whole feud is over what happened, what we've seen in the episodes, where we know it's probably been festering for this 10 years. You know, there's more stuff that has
Yeah.
set this feud on fire. So
Hmm.
I hope we get a little bit more context of what that is because really she's acting this way in my mind because Rhaenyra lied to her previously. And is that really worth the huge character change?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just really relevant in this episode, this point in time in their story, because like here's the third child that is a direct reminder of that lie and
Yeah.
that, that deed. And also, you know, equally like kind of odd too. It's like here's Cole 10 years later, still like upset about, his heart being broken. So, yeah, it could probably definitely use a little bit more, you know, 10 years is a long time to like hold that grudge. But then
Yeah.
again, like,
I think that I think the Cole thing probably goes much deeper. Like, of course, that the heartbreak is what started him on this path, but
mhm.
Allison saving him there at the end, he is fully wearing green right now,
Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And you see that through the episode when they're teaching the kids, and you see how rough he is with Rhaenyra's kids versus the other ones. But I do want to talk about the children because and I hope you have their names because they were like rattling them off left and right throughout the episode. So uh the Aegon and
Recast, by the way, everyone. He's been
yeah,
recast. He's no longer an infant.
right.
He's like 12. No, he'd be like 14.
Yeah, that's about right. That's actually David Tennant's son who played Kilgrave in the Jessica Jones
Hmm.
series. So I thought that was super interesting. I love that actor, so I hope that his son can live up to the hype. Major, major Joffrey vibes coming off
Big
this dude.
Joffrey. Big
Big
Joffrey. It,
Joffrey.
it adds to the Cersei thing Allison has going because her
Yeah,
her oldest son is Joffrey.
right. And I do think that Allison, to a point, has because she mentions it in the episode. Like if Rhaenyra ascends the throne, she can cut off any threat to her succession. So I
Mhm.
do think that I do think that she thinks Rhaenyra would do that, kill the children to prevent them from
I
starting war.
I think
But do
that's
you think
entirely misplaced.
I think it is too, yeah.
Because Rhaenyra wouldn't do that. She has no
No.
need to. She's
Right.
heir,
Yeah.
and like Viserys has. If Viserys is the middle point of all of that, he is the family, and like there's no reason why that should be perpetuated. That's still something that Otto kind of instilled in her early on. Um, Now, I think that was born out of a lot of fear when Damon was around, and it was just like a
Yeah.
much more aggressive time when it came to, it was much more heightened in the first couple episodes when they were all young, and it was kind of controversial for him to name her the heir. Now, 10 years later, 14 years later, even, it kind of doesn't make sense to still kind of perpetuate that thought that Rhaenyra would do that.
Right. Yeah, I don't it kind of brings up more questions that I answered because like who and I don't even know if there is supposed to be a good and a bad side to this war, right? It seems
Mhm.
like both sides are kind of
Actually, I say that, but the other part of it though that heightens that idea is that the kingdom won't accept it, so there will inevitably be a war when Rhaenyra takes the throne.
yeah.
So then she will have to kill them. You know what I mean? So there's like this the fact that the kingdom will pick sides and not everyone will back Rhaenyra just means that there for sure will be a war. It's the same thing that um Rhaenys said to Collis,
Yeah, Corliss.
that just by simply marrying Rhaenyra puts their family in the line of fire for the eventual conflict because everyone is so convinced that Rhaenyra being the heir and eventually queen will cause a conflict. So
Right.
in that context, then yeah, it makes sense that Alicent knows it is inevitable that her family's life is in danger.
Yeah. It just seems like, especially in this episode, that Alicent is far more the aggressor and Rhaenyra
Mhm.
is far more passive, even to the end of the episode where she runs
Yeah,
away, basically. So, it, you know,
to get
it.
ready to fight.
I feel like lining up on the wrong side of this war. Alicent's got the Mad Queen thing going on, so she seems, at least in this episode, to be the coming villain. Her and her father, I would imagine.
Yeah, because this ushers the idea of bringing Otto back. That's the whole reason Laris did that, because she just wanted her father back because he would be partial to her.
Yeah,
Whereas everyone around her is still kind of impartial, but she has her lackeys. She has a knight, Sir Kristen Cole, and she has Varys, or sorry, Laris, you know the the whisper
yeah.
guy,
What are we gonna
the
call him? The
sneaky guy,
beetle? The
the
beetle?
beetle.
The stink
Yeah, and
beetle?
I
Stink
did
bug?
love that. I did love that too. Like the scene where he sets up the death of his brother and
Yes.
father, he just drops with like the cane and like the beetle sigil. I'm like, that's not his sigil.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
that's suspicious.
Yeah. Yeah, I really dug that scene a lot, especially because he makes them take their tongues out and
Cuts their
stuff.
tongues
And
off so they can't necessarily speak word
right,
of what they did.
what they did. And I like the look they got going on with the hoods and the little beetle pins and
Very
stuff.
hidden ones.
I was for whatever reason, even though I knew that he wasn't down in that dungeon, the one dude I thought was Otto for like maybe 30 seconds of that scene. I was like, is that Otto right there? Like they threw him in the dungeon?
Dang, tough.
But, yeah, maybe just a little too close to the casting there on that one. He looked like a dirty Otto that's been in
Dirty.
a dungeon.
Yeah, gotta remember Otto's pretty old at this point too.
Right. Yeah, so, I'm super excited to see him come back. I'm curious to see how the king is going to take it, how easily he's going to be swayed, if we'll even get to see if him being swayed to bring Otto back. I don't
He's
know.
gonna be devastated about the news in general. We didn't really see his reaction to the news.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
and, again, Harrenhal looking sexier than ever. Like that castle's just freaking cool, man. I don't care
just
what you say.
smoldering. I love the detail that it was the mortar just has like blood in
Yeah.
mixed in with the mortar. Like that's just gnarly.
Yeah, like give me a horror Game of Thrones
Yeah,
series set in Harrenhal like 200 years ago with like ghosts and stuff. I'm all for it because that castle, even in the opening shot of the show, it's just haunting looking. Like
yeah,
it's a very cool looking castle.
yeah. And they had the Great Hall, like basically where everyone was running out from the fire, and then the burning
Yeah.
sleeping quarters to the left. On the right, you could see the like busted up main hall where
Yeah.
that first scene is shot in the series, which was cool. So
I
keep it
will
all real.
say I will say that coming up to Harrenhal, it looks much, much smaller than it
Yeah,
does when you're like panning over top of it. It
yeah,
looked like one tower in the road leading up to it.
yeah. I thought the same thing. It looked smaller than it ought to have been.
Right.
Um, so rewatching the episode, I definitely have like a standout character that's like my favorite,
Yeah.
and this also is what makes me very partial to Rhaenyra, and
Okay.
it's Laenor. I really, really like Laenor in this episode.
Yeah.
He was kind of just like generic and bland, like in the last episode when they set all that up. But this episode, like, he's kind of got like a, he's like this weird combination of um, like Jamie and Tyrion. Like he's a knight, but he's also kind of like belligerent and
Yeah.
drunk,
Yeah.
and just having a good old time. And he's kind of dreaming of war, but I just really like the interaction and the role he plays. He plays his role very faithfully to Rhaenyra, like for what he's there to do. And I just really love their like plutonic agreement that they have
Yeah.
going on. Like it fits so well. And they shed it when they need to. And even to that last scene when they're walking up on Dragonstone, he's there holding the baby. Like
Yeah.
he's just down for whatever, and he's not really making a fuss about it or complicating the situation.
Yeah.
So
I was
I
like,
liked him a lot.
I did too. Yeah, I really like his new act. Not that the old actor was bad. I thought he did a good job when the younger version of him. But yeah, I like this new guy way more. And for whatever reason, I forgot about that agreement. So I was like, does he know that those kids? Like, he's got to know that those kids aren't his, right? Like, they're
Yeah.
so. Once they sat down and had the discussion and brought it back up, I remembered it. But yeah, their interactions through even that first scene where
Yeah.
he comes rolling up and the walk up the stairs, I think is hilarious. And I thought that first scene, the birth, was filmed very, very good with the quick shots back and forth to the maids and all that stuff. I thought it was really, really well done. And a nice drawback to her mom, like you said earlier, dying in that, it was very reminiscent of the scenes that we got with her mother when she was in childbirth.
Mm-hmm.
And we always know, I mean, we knew that Rhaenyra didn't want to end up in this spot that she's in right now, and she's in it, unfortunately. But
And that's the
go
ahead.
No, you're good.
No, I was gonna say, and that's the other like big thing that was in this episode was we didn't just get one childbirth, right? So like we're really laying on the layers of children here. So yes, we have the three high towers, we'll call them to
Yeah.
keep things simple. Three high tower children, 2 boys and a daughter. We have the 3 boys of Targaryens being Rhaenyra's children, but we also have two or three. Was that their third supposed to?
Rhaenyra's?
No, Damon's.
Oh, Damon's. Yeah, that was the third coming. Yeah.
Right. Yes, that was the third coming. So we're about half and half on Dragon Riders too, because one of Damon's children can, the other one can't. That's a little bit of a plot line here. And I really love the detail how she was explaining to her daughter that she didn't get Vagar until she was much older. And I like how we talked about that dragon was just off somewhere, and she, in this 10-year span, she grew up, found Vengar,
Yeah.
and tamed him as her dragon. And I'm like, that's a cool thing. I kind of wish we could have saw, but I understand we're not kind of here to see that.
Right.
but they do very good, at least from our perspective, because we kind of know what's going on, like in the peripherals, but time jumping to what's important and kind of pushing through these relationships, but also like giving them some weight, because I really felt the weight between Damon and his wife, and like what they built together. And then she gets kind of taken away out of that picture, and obviously Rhaenyra's strong boy toy is taken out of the picture.
Right.
So like, they do these quick offshoots where it's, hey, they have other relationships, things are built, and like they have a lot of baggage with them, but like ultimately we know where things need
where
to
they're heading.
click back up.
Yeah. I'm excited to see what happens with Vagar now that she is dead, right?
Yeah.
Because that would presumably be a big swing, whoever gets that dragon, because like we said, I mean, it's huge. So, and I love the design. I think the CGI on that dragon looks the best maybe out of any of the dragons that we've ever seen, including in Game of Thrones. I like that it has like the old like gray hair hanging down off of it in that last shot. So I don't know. We'll see. You would you would think that that dragon's going to make it to Dragonstone with Daemon, which is where I presume he's going to be heading. But something tells me that that's not going to happen. That dragon's going to go somewhere else. I have a guess, maybe, who would get that dragon, but we'll have to wait because I don't want to make a prediction. Because yeah, I'll make a prediction. I think that the other Alicent son, and I can't remember his name,
I think it's Aemon.
Aemon. Yes,
Yep.
I think that he is going to get that dragon in some fashion.
Yeah, because they made it a point that he does not have a dragon.
Right.
And by the way, the dragon pit, which looks sweet on the inside,
Yes.
dark and scary.
So cool.
Um,
Yeah.
and finally we get the point at which like, oh, that's the spot from Game of Thrones with the ramps and all that stuff. But yeah, they definitely, it is funny. I think it's purposeful, intentional that they had that bit on the Daemon side of the world with the dragons and the children and how
Yeah.
that works. And then we have Aemon here who doesn't have a dragon and he's like teased for it and belittled over it. And yeah, Aegon sucks.
Yeah.
A lot. Like he's just a big Joffrey.
And I do think there are nods because I do know that maybe I shouldn't even say it because it's probably a spoiler of some fashion, but there are nods to Aemon's character moving forward in this episode. So I want to put a pin in that and we'll talk about it when it gets here. But
Yeah,
it's in the scene where Alicent's daughter is looking at the centipede or whatever that
yeah.
thing is.
Centipede,
There
millipede.
put a pin in that scene for later and we'll talk about it. That way I don't spoil anything, but she makes a comment there that's a direct nod to his character moving forward. So
Gotcha.
that's what makes me think just the way that they set up him not having a dragon and getting teased for it, and then he's going to end up getting the biggest dragon and being probably the most badass out of all of them because of it. But to go back to the dragon pit, yeah, I really really love seeing the inside of the dragon pit, and we had talked before like how the hell that building isn't big enough to hold all those dragons. They're underneath. They're not even in the building. They're underneath the building. You know what I mean? They're like in
Yeah.
tunnels underneath, which I thought was really really cool. And it's almost set up like a coliseum. Did you see? Are there like
Yeah.
seats up there? So are they having like dragon fights in that building?
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
an
it's a
oval
pit. It's a
coliseum, and
dragon pit.
yeah, I think there are some sort of like benches. I assume there is some sort of because they're training, right? They're training them, so there's probably some sort of exhibition once you kind of master your dragon, and like everyone kind of shows up and like watches what goes on. And maybe at one time it was much more of a big deal, and maybe that's something that has since kind of faded, just the same
Yeah.
way the dragon pit's like completely destroyed by Game of Thrones time.
Right.
So I definitely think at one time it was much more centerpiece, and maybe now it's just for training and like just
Yeah.
at most like the court shows up to kind of watch like, oh, Aemon or sorry, Aegon like has mastered his dragon and he's
Yeah.
gonna, put a show on kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. Once I saw what seemed like seating areas in there, I was like, okay, fighting pits from Game of Thrones, dragon pit. Like maybe this is like they fought in this pit at some point,
Hmm.
dragon versus dragon for entertainment purposes. But yeah, I really liked the part where Aemon goes down into the tunnel and sees a pretty big dragon. I don't know if we know what dragon that is. Uh,
It looked like Laenor's dragon the
could
way
be, yeah, could be.
it looked like Laenor's dragon. But also it sounded like Rhaenyra's dragons laying eggs because they made the comment about if Caraxes has like another bushel of eggs,
Yeah.
that Alicent's daughter or son they would get one. So little details there and there. I
Yeah,
wonder I
yeah,
wonder how the egg birthing all
yeah, how that all
these
works,
dragon
yeah,
masters or whatever you call them, like they're busy in this
yes,
dragon pit.
very,
Talk about a job, right?
yeah.
I feel like they're bred like that's like a specific lineage of just like
Oh,
dragon
probably.
masters.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I hope we get, more insight into all of that. I do wanna talk about the small council meeting that you were just discussing where Rhaenyra offers the
Hmm.
hand, the plea. I thought it was hilarious. The Lannister dude's back. I'm glad to see him back. We don't get much of him. I like that the one dude, I think it's the Master Coin, is just like so old and deaf that he doesn't even know what topic they're on
The
anymore.
Macer's like, we've moved on
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
stepstones or whatever, and he's
yeah.
like still talking about the
And
other
he's still
thing.
talking about it. And then I really really like that. Like I said in earlier episodes, the stepstone thing's not over. Even though we killed the crab feeder, I knew that there was more conflict coming over this territory. So we do hear that the Martells have now aligned themselves with the Triarchy, which you know how I feel about House Martell. So give me some House Martell on this, and this is going to be like a dream come true for me. So exciting, context of what moving forward here. We might be on the cusp of multiple wars on multiple fronts, which would be kind of interesting to see, especially for Allison's side, who would be fighting presumably the war in the Stepstones, while
Yeah,
Rhaenyra tries to chip away at her power. I don't know. It could
I,
play really good.
yeah. Well, given the stance, and this is another point for Nira and a minus a point for Allison, was Rhaenyra had the better point in terms of like we should have made it a point to defend and hold the stepstones, because it would be probably cheaper to do that than just to go to war again. Where
Yeah,
Allison's just kind of like doesn't care because it's not on her doorstep kind of
right.
attitude. Um, so that's where I was kind of thinking, like, well, maybe Rhaenyra is going to pull kind of like a Daemon, or with Daemon's help, is going to pull Daemon, and they're going to make it a point to go take care of the stepstone thing, um, in terms of like they're going to deal with it to just kind of further grow their position, because we also have to remember that what we completely did not get up any follow up on in this episode was the fact that Damon is Lord of the Erie.
Right, yeah.
So either that's left unclaimed to him, or he claimed it and he's just been like absent. And I don't imagine. I imagine that is his. So we have Rhaenyra going back to Dragonstone. So there's a line to draw there where it's like the sea, because obviously they have the Valerians and Corlys, so they have the sea. So it's kind of this line that goes from like the Erie right down the middle of Kings Bay, or what's it called? Is that Kings Bay? Um, Blackwater Bay.
Yes, yeah, Blackwater
Blackwater
Bay,
Bay,
yeah.
and then like out to the narrow sea and down to the Stepstone. So, and then on the other side of that would be King's Landing and the rest of the kingdom. So there is a slight territory growing that would become one side, and then the other would be the other side. They also discussed the business about the phrase was with there's two familiar house names that they mentioned that
Yeah,
were bickering up in the Riverlands.
it was the 2 families that I had told you in previous episodes were, like, they're always feuding. I don't remember those names. Those aren't names I'm familiar with in Game of Thrones, I don't think.
Hmm.
But they're like the, feuding family that are always killing each other.
Yeah.
When Rhaenyra goes to Storm's End and that fight breaks out with the little kid, that's
Yep.
those families there feuding. And then the other one was, it wasn't Frey, but it was a familiar,
Hmm.
but it's slipping my mind for whatever reason. Tully
Silly.
is the house. So yeah, that's a callback to Kat and her house, and the what was it, the Blackfish, I think, was
Yeah.
her brother. So yeah, it's cool to get that stuff, and then again, like the Martell stuff, I want to see. I
Right.
want to see. I don't know that we will see Dorne in this show. We'll see. It does seem that they've aligned themselves with a big issue, which is the Triarchy. So we could at some point see that. And then I like the shots of Pentos that we got in here. It's like a chill place, man, isn't it? Like it's just like a bunch of rich dudes hanging out is what the vibe I got.
Definitely like southern coast of the Mediterranean vibe.
Yeah.
Very, very arid, but like probably grow a lot of olives and
Yep.
things there like
Yeah.
that. And like they just kind of trade. They got their very Moor-esque castle, which they
Yep.
kind of just call a big mansion. Also, it's less of a defensive castle, more of just like a fancy estate atop
Right.
the cliff hills there.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that place is pretty chill, and they're basically just saying they just want to be able to say they have dragons on their team, just probably to exert more power over trade and just the area in negotiations. I don't think they're like very warlike. They're just like they just want to have dragons to say they have dragons.
Yeah, they make it sound like Pentos is like the last in the free cities to not align with the Triarchy, right?
Right.
So I think they're trying to avoid that and trying to avoid them coming in and taking it by force, and the dragons certainly would help. So yeah, I again loved all the Damon scenes we get in this. You know, he felt like Damon, just doesn't really care. He's just reading on vacation, like you said.
He's such a kind of goes where the universe takes him kind
Yeah,
of character
yeah.
because he found some love, right? Had some kids, and he just really kind of wanted to separate himself from the politics of Westeros. And here, his wife dies, kind of tragically, but how she wanted to. And he actually decides to not kill her, unlike his brother Viserys has decided to kill his wife.
Well,
Um,
did he though? Because the vibe I got was that he was on the cusp of making that decision, and she bolted because she didn't want to die in
oh,
childbirth.
I kind of took his low dialogue scene there, and his demeanor is kind of like it's not like worth the like him to make that decision, like just
Yeah,
not like
yeah,
he's just kind of at the point where it's like let's do less. But I think I took it as like she went off to do that because the child's essentially probably stuck up there at this point, or
yeah.
like it would be very traumatic for her to like not finish through the birth. So I think she knew she was done for either way because
Right.
um to do like the C-section more or less was to at least have a chance to save the child, but it like
Not the
guarantees her
Yeah,
death.
right.
But either way, I think she knew she was dying no matter what. But maybe but yeah, she just didn't want to die on the birthing table like she does
Yeah.
in the books. She
Yeah,
dies
I
like that in
think
the books I saw, but
Oh, does
they
she?
they they
Interesting.
they didn't want they didn't want her to go out like that. They added in the bit how she kind of dies by dragon fire, like a dragon rider.
Yeah, I think it was a good fitting end for her, to be honest, because even when she was a kid, like, she was very interested in dragons. She was
Hmm.
talking about, Balerion with the king when they had their little awkward, walk through the gardens. So,
Hmm.
yeah, fitting end for her. I mean, obviously she had to die, right? We know
Yeah.
where Damon is heading. So, yeah, yeah, I was happy with her ending, and it was cool to see Vhagar shoot his fire multiple times actually in the episode because she kind of like sets him up with a fireball while they're flying together.
Dude, they had like some like you could see way down his throat, and
Yeah,
like there was like some flaps in there and all kinds of like crazy details. I was
yeah,
like,
that's what I'm
geez
saying.
Louise.
He looked really, really good compared to the other one. Not that the other ones look bad. I just think that, especially in the first couple episodes, the CGI was just a little
He just has
off.
a really hardy look to him. Like he just
Yeah,
looks like very realistic. Whereas like the other ones are like spiky and cool and fantasy looking. Like he just looks like a
right.
old hard ass dragon
Yeah,
that's just like lived in a cave for the
yeah,
past 20 years.
yeah. I love it. Again, when you see him, or it's actually her, Vagar's a female. When you see her flying with Caraxes again just does not move right. I don't know what it is. You see it again in this episode while he's flying up. There's just something off about it, and
It
and I
just it snakes it. It's a worm.
I know, but it just I don't know. They're just not doing it very good. I don't think it just
Yeah.
makes it look very very fake. His flying. Um, I will give him points for having the most horrifying scream or growl out of all of them so far. Caraxes' growl is the best.
I mean, he was
So
pissed about that fireball, like
yeah,
all fun and games, but like that is something I feel like that dragon's not going to forget.
right.
Like I don't think that dragon forgets like Jade's against him. Like
Yeah,
he
absolutely.
carries it all to the grave.
Just like Damon. Yep, yep.
Yep, never forget. Yeah. So yeah, there's also the collection of kids that we have now that are all going to grow up. Um, Lots of potential for dragon riders there. Obviously, the Rhaenyra's children. I definitely stood by Alicent when she made the comment to Viserys as they walk up the stairs. Just like what she say, like plain looking children, plain featured kids.
Yeah.
Like they are pretty standard.
Yep. Yeah.
Like they look like the dad, and
Right.
I had to look back at the last episode. I'm like, yeah, that is the same guy. Like he's like the same, just with curly hair and
Yeah, his hair's a little bit longer and he looks a little bit bigger, but it might be the armor that he's wearing
yeah,
throughout most of the
he wasn't
episode.
wearing
Very
armor.
houndish armor.
Yeah.
His hound it looked a lot like the hound's armor. But I did really, really enjoy the training
Hmm.
sequence there. I thought it was really well done. I thought it showed that Cole was going to try to get any little snippet for Alicent that he could get, right?
I
And I
mean,
think that's why he did it.
he doesn't like hold. He's not reserved at all. He's just
Right.
like, oh, a cousin, a brother,
Yeah.
a son, in front
Yeah.
of like everyone.
Right.
Like the kids all
King.
heard it.
Yeah, the king, the
Um,
hand, everybody, yeah.
and I like Viserys. He's great. He makes even more sense now that he's like ancient.
Yeah.
Because he's sitting there and he has a total granddad like comment where he's like to the hand who could care like really less or isn't worried about that, but he's like, look at that, fight together, grow together, bond
Yeah,
for
bond
life.
for
Like
life,
it's
yeah.
so like he has such a like not innocent, but like not pathetic. There's like just this positivity he carries with him where
Way too
everything.
much, yeah.
Yeah, he's like that granddad where everything's just great. Like I'm so
Right.
proud of just everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, definitely, yeah, and it's funny because we
why do
know
my three
that
grandchildren have curly black hair?
yeah. We know that, like, nothing has gone right for this dude. So it's a
Put a smile. He's Mr. Rogers.
he is, man, he is. He's just he hasn't let literally every tragic thing that has happened to him in the show so far jeopardize him at all. He's just a happy dude with one arm falling apart. I do want to mention that both of us were actually wrong on his death. So I think you
Yeah.
said that he wasn't making the time jump or he was going to die somewhere in the time jump.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that he would certainly die in this episode, and he did not die in this episode.
He's still
So
kicking.
still kicking, which is
They faked us out with the fall at the end
yeah,
of the last episode.
for sure. But yeah, I think definitely, like, without question, my money is on next episode. They're like, it has to be next episode, bro. I can't imagine he gets much further.
I could see. Well, he may he'll make it to at least the end, if not the next episode, because I think there has to be that whole episode where he's just like they're gonna have to devastate this poor old man, and like he's just no, he hasn't nothing lets him down.
Yeah.
He just stays himself, but like I feel like that's gonna be like just they have to drive that home and just like crush,
Well,
disappoint him,
I
and just
think
show like make him bear fruit to like how in peril everything is. I don't know. Or he just dies like oblivious and he's like, whatever, peace.
yeah, true. I think that almost certainly what Rhaenyra does at the end of this episode is going to be that moment for him
Mm,
because there's really no reason that she should be running away, right? Unless what we learn in this episode, which is her kids are not with the Valerian, but with the Strong. What I can't remember his first name. Doesn't matter. But
Harwin.
that's going to be the only reason that she would run from the heir to the throne and leave the kingdoms because that is true. Why what other reason would she have to leave? So I think that's probably going to be the moment where he's like the aha moment of wait,
I mean, he
shit's
knows.
real bad with my family.
Yeah, I mean, he knows. He's just
I don't think he
denial.
does.
He's
I
in
don't think he does.
denial.
I don't think he's even in denial, bro. I think he's because he tells that story about the horses. Like that's not a denial story. That's like a hey,
Ye-
kids
Nah,
can have different hair colors.
nah, I think that's just him reinforcing his denial. Like he's making
Yeah.
excuses. Yeah, he definitely knows. He just chooses not to. Because everyone around him has made that comment. Like Christian Cole said, he for sure knows.
Yeah.
Even the Hand said, like, I don't know why he chooses not to see it with his own eyes. But that's the only like flimsy shield that is protecting you right now is the fact that he doesn't see it.
Right.
Um, and obviously, yeah, I mean, also he also said it again to Allison, like these are grave accusations, that you're kind of tossing around with almost certainty.
Yeah.
So that's the tough part where she has a very valid point. She's not wrong, but she's being pretty vindictive about it.
Yeah.
Me directly or indirectly, whether it's directly with Cole, or indirectly with Laris.
Yeah, and I also want to talk about our boy Aegon standing up in the window, like
Man,
bro, like
Aw-
major Joffrey vibes, right? Not even Joffrey
awkward,
vibes because Joffrey like had no interest in that stuff. Like he just
right?
wanted to kill shit. Like he's
Yeah,
just, yeah, it's totally awkward standing up in the window. He's gonna like,
over
is he
King's
like
Landing.
over King's Landing? Yeah,
Yeah.
but
I mean, there's that, but then like his mom just walks in and is like, doesn't pay it no mind.
doesn't even phase her. Doesn't
Nope,
phase her at all that he she just walked on her 14-year-old son up in the window of all
just wanking it
places, just
over King's
wanking it up
Landing.
in the window. But I really like that scene because that is really where I think her character moving forward is going to come. Like she comes out in that
Yeah.
scene where she grabs him by the face and yells at him basically. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that moving forward. So again, just another scene in this episode to really drive home that Allison is completely different from the Allison that we know. That Allison died at the wedding in the last episode, and this is the new Allison, and I'm loving it, dude. I absolutely love it. So hopefully, I mean, she might she's seeming like she could be the villain of the show. But is there a villain? That's what I wanted to discuss because there's really shitty people on both sides of this. Like who's good, who's bad. I mean, we obviously have our opinions. Like you obviously, I would imagine, line up
Well,
on Rhaenyra's good side, right?
yeah. I mean, it'll be tough. Because there's obviously the will of Viserys, like he's the king and
Yeah,
Rhaenyra's the heir. Like there really should be no contest to that. Damon has in this episode had a change of character drastically, but I doubt that will last long. Damon will definitely be a villain on the Rhaenyra side of things, right? Doing the horrific things that need to be done. But I don't see much stopping Allison from becoming that. Obviously, Laris is already doing that. Cole will do whatever.
yeah.
Um, so it's really going to be a stack of like who's more in the wrong and who's doing the most damage here. Which I mean, Damon can probably do enough damage to kind of out damage everybody. He's just pure DPS most of the
Yeah.
time. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't I don't think very highly of Rhaenyra's children. Like they kind of there's kind of bland and they kind of suck.
See,
But
I think I might be opposite on that, where I don't think very highly, even though they're on my side. I don't think very highly of Allison's kids,
oh, I don't
especially
think highly of
Aegon.
them either. I don't
Like
think
they're, yeah, he's gonna be a monster
I think
for sure.
highly of Damon's children. I think
Yes.
they're going to be awesome, but
Yeah.
so far all the ones in King's Landing suck.
Right.
Though, um, Aemon,
Yeah.
is that the second Hightower son?
Yes.
I think he'll have some redeeming qualities.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I think
Y-
so.
yeah. I think so as well. I'll be curious to see if he flips sides at any point during this. It seems like it could be odd for him to do that, but they kind of set him up to be like the black sheep of the family a little
Right.
bit. Like he doesn't have a
Hmm.
dragon, they're all picking on him. So, yeah, it would definitely be interesting. I know where that guy's heading character wise, the way he looks at least. I don't know where he's going with his story. So,
Right.
very, very interested to see how both of them turn out. I think Aegon's going to be a freaking turd, bro, to be honest with you. But
Oh
maybe I'm
yeah,
wrong. Maybe,
no.
just some of the kids in this, they go through that rebellious stage. And
Unless
he's
that one lecture from his mother really kind of flips him,
right.
and he's just gonna stop beating it over King's
Yeah.
Landing magically. I don't think that's how that works.
Yeah, probably not.
He went right back to the business as soon as she left. He's like, "Well, that was dramatic.
Yeah.
Anyways, finish what I was doing,
I do really
mother."
love how it was not didn't even phase her. Like, she didn't even mention it. She just
Nope.
went right into the question.
Well, she was just like, "Get dressed."
Yeah.
Like that's how she ended her whole
Right.
entire ordeal. Just get dressed. You're embarrassing.
Yep.
Whatever. And she had a lot of good points too. It's definitely tough, and it's very Games of Thrones in that sense that there isn't really a clear good or bad side. It's really a
Right.
very, very complicated family matter. Is really the big difference here. Is like this is just and Rhaenyra made the point at the small council meeting where it's like we are one house, and like
Yeah.
you kind of forget that.
Right.
Really, you forget that, but like she definitely reminded me. I'm like, oh crap, like yeah, like they are one house, which is
Yeah.
insane. Insane to think that like all of our main characters are one house, and it's just like who's siding with this part of this one house.
Right. And we have so many different threads going on here. And like we said, we were concerned that we weren't going to have as many as the original show because it's all taking place in King's Landing. Well, we learned that it's not really all taking place in King's Landing. We have Damon all over the place. We have other stories going on, but there's a lot of threads in this show. And I love what they're building 100%. I love what we're building towards. And I'm super excited because I don't know the outcome. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who ends up on the throne at the end of all of this. I don't know how any of this pans out. So, that has me excited to see going forward what happens. Now, are they changing things from the books? I mean, it sounds like little
Yeah.
things here and there. So they should be still keeping it fresh for people that have read the books. But to be on the side that I haven't read the book at all, I don't know this part of the history really either. Super excited to see it. Like I have no guess at how this ends so far.
Yeah, and thank goodness the family tree is so complicated
Yeah.
because even looking at the family tree, I haven't looked at it since starting the show. Just before the show, I looked at it just to get like some names down and what's going on. I have some maybe like very hazy ideas of like at least who goes further than others, but other than that, like that tree is so complicated to
Yeah.
draw on a chart. I'm like,
For sure.
I still don't know.
Right.
I still don't know, like, because everything's just connected. It's just like a mess.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, it's definitely all going to be very new along the way, which is exciting. And yeah, there's tons of things to track too, and they're doing a really good job with the ancillary support characters.
Yeah.
Because already, like in one episode, they birth this beetle character who they have quietly set up for many episodes, but all of a sudden he steps into his own.
Yeah.
And he's gonna be a big player going forward. We obviously have Cole, who is gonna be doing his thing. And then trying to think. Well, we lost the Strongs, most of them. They're all dead. That was sad though. I didn't. I like the Hand of the King,
Yeah.
even though he was kind of like a pushover. Anyways, like I guess Hand of the King wise, he kind of sucked because he just did his job.
Right.
A good Hand of the King is always up to more, I suppose.
Right. Yeah.
But Otto could be coming back. I mean, I guess it would be dumb to think he's not coming back.
Yeah, I think 100% he's coming back.
But maybe this is where Otto doesn't make it like you thought before. Like something tells me he's definitely gonna die.
Yeah.
Because Allison can't really have that wish. Plus, he's dirt old too. I mean, maybe he'll just die with Viserys. Like they'll be holding hands and just die together.
Yeah. Yeah, I think yeah, for sure he's coming back. I don't think, now that he comfortably made it out of King's Landing the first time, I think he's locked in at least to the end of the season. Because he's got to come and be the Tywin to Cersei here with
Mhm.
Allison, right? So I do want to make a prediction that we will see Cole and Damon go at it again, and maybe a battle coming.
Good old sword fight.
A little sword fight, a little
Yeah.
drawback to the tournament in the first episode where he unseated, Cole unseated Damon, and then they went
Finale.
at it.
Season
Finale for
finale.
sure.
Sword
Yeah,
fight.
sword
Big
fight.
one.
Yeah. So I think that would be cool. Yeah, I'm excited moving forward, man. And I think it's like, even though you said they filmed this like a pilot, it just felt so much quicker. There was more action. There was more substance to grab onto. So I think we're going to start really, putting the pedal down here. Now we got all the background story out of the way, even
Mm-hmm.
though we just introduced like 10 new characters and changed 2 actresses. But
Yeah.
now's the time to hit the gas,
Yeah, but all those new characters fit in so well because
Yeah,
we know their families like past, and a lot of this is just kind of carrying forward family drama from
right.
like prior generations. So just the fact that they are the children of who their parents are automatically explains a lot about them. Plus, some of them like Aegon have easy lines drawn to Joffrey where it's like, yeah, we kind of get where his character is going. And a lot of these families, there's just so much like supporting information for these characters where they don't need like a whole entire introduction or explanation of what's going on. They just
Right.
get to come in and be the character they're kind of supposed to be, which is kind of a cool thing about Game of Thrones and um in particular is that everything's so interrelated.
Yeah,
You don't need a ton of exposition to be like, "Ah, this is why this person became this way and does these things he does." So it's
right.
because, well, the context clues are all over the place.
Yeah, definitely. And I really, and I'm surprised that you don't line yourself with Allison more, because like we said before, you're a big Cersei fan. She's got major Cersei vibes going on. She's got children that you could really tie to Joffrey, Tommen, and Marcella. So
Oh yeah,
it's like a direct, ripple effect back to Cersei. And that's the vibes I'm getting. And it makes me kind of feel a little gross being on her side. You know what I mean? Even with Tywin and Otto, like they've got the Lannister vibe from the original showdown. We have Cersei, Tywin, the 3 children, the old dying king that's about to go out. Like it's all coming together. Very
yeah.
Lannister like.
And maybe that just makes me think like I'm less a fan of like their actions and more a fan of like their specific like personalities.
Yeah.
Because the actions and the setups all the same, but their personalities still are very different.
Right.
And they're also Lannisters. Like I just don't like high towers. I don't care for high towers, but I
Yeah.
like Lannisters. Like
Yeah.
the very the finely aged Lannisters that we get in Game of Thrones versus these very like upstart ones like we kind of get here.
Right. Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah, yeah, that's an interesting observation because yeah, I'm definitely more on the. I mean, I always like Danny too, like Targaryens, but now
Right.
I like the very very the privileged, the established like powerhouse, like
Yeah.
should be the Targaryens in this one. Like they kind of have like the rightful claim. Lannisters, they just mostly have gold and like really good one-liners. So
Right. Yeah. And I think that, you know, I think aligning yourself on that side, like it's hard for me to not be over there with you because I love
sure,
Damon and I love where his
yeah,
character's been, and I'm sure I'm gonna love where his character's going. He's got, if I picture prior to this show a Targaryen in my head, that's who I would picture, like from this time. And he's got that like wants to bring the Targaryen family back to Aegon's conquest Targaryen family and not this wimpy family that we've become over the years.
he one he acts it out well, Matt Smith, but also
Yes.
two,
Yeah.
Damon's character is just like he's that quintessential like rogue fallen
Yeah.
prince
Yep.
vibe going on for him, and like that just works so well, especially in the right context. And his character is so dynamic yet not dynamic. It's like fun because this episode, for most of the episode, he's swung around and like he's technically what he should be, as like, oh, he like is attempting to give up what like the life that completely made him a dirtbag, and
Right.
he's a very great person for it. Like, he's fine, he's normal, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
You shed away all the things that make him, all his vices, but he's gonna go right back to all those vices
For sure.
because
Yeah.
his life kind of fell back apart.
Yeah.
But I mean, now he's dead, and he might have more dragons. Three
We'll see.
dragons.
Well, yeah, we'll see. We
Well, the one
have
daughter has a dragon.
she has a dragon, yes.
Second daughter doesn't.
We have a dragon egg. She has a dragon egg that hasn't hatched yet. So
8 years.
that could come. Yeah, 8 years seems like a long time. I don't think
They
it's
might
gonna hatch, but I don't know the time. I don't know the life cycle of dragons, so I don't know how long the eggs take to
Danny
hatch.
hatched 3 after like hundreds of years.
Also valid. Yes, good point. Yeah. So and then we have, like we said, I don't know what's gonna happen with Vagar. I have a feeling there's no way it's gonna land up in the Targaryen side of this war. There's no way.
Yeah, that definitely seems like an Aemon snatch
Yeah.
up. However, that falls out. Yeah, I do hope we get a lot more detail on Vagar in general. And that kind of becomes like a nice little subplot point. Like, we need to get Vagar
Yeah.
saddled over here on someone's team. Just because Vagar's in the picture, and maybe Vagar is like, he doesn't want to be, or she doesn't want to be single. She needs a
Right.
dragon rider.
Right.
Right. So like, what's gonna, why is Vagar gonna decide to have a dragon rider after just losing one versus just flying off like it did for the past like however many
Yeah.
years prior?
Yeah, she's over it. She don't want to do that anymore. She had her time in the sun. Now she's ready to live out her life and be the dragon she wants to be.
And she
Like
secretly doesn't like Caraxes because Caraxes is
right.
like a snarly little
Yeah. Yep. So I think, yeah, for
bullshit.
sure that would line it with what, 3, 4 dragons on the Targaryen side with
Daemon,
Rhaenyra's
Rhaenyra,
husband,
Laenor. One of their kids has one, very little one. That's 4.
right?
Oh, plus Daemon's daughter. That's 5.
Yes.
So then we have
5 and an egg
Aegon.
on that side. And then we have, yes,
They have
Aegon.
Aegon. It's just Aegon.
I think it might just be Aegon, yeah. Because the king doesn't have one. Not that he's gonna need it, because
Yeah.
he's gonna die. They
Aegon.
mention
They have to get Vagar.
they have to. Yeah,
That's gonna be the showstopper pull out for them, is they get Vagar
it has to be.
from Aemon.
Yeah, because it's just too lopsided. Like, we have 4
Yeah.
dragons and the biggest navy over on this side, and then the crown. Which, not to say the crown is anything
They
anything
got
small.
foot soldiers. Yeah.
They have an army, and 1 dragon. So
And then, they're going to be rolling the dice for that second one.
right. And we don't know, theoretically, we don't know how many dragons are down in that dragon pit too that are in King's Landing. Like, there might
True.
be more down in there, but it would seem like if that were the case, Aemon would have gotten one of those dragons that's down in there, right?
Well, it's tricky. So we know that they're gifted an egg at birth, and hopefully and ideally that hatches and that becomes their dragon. But as we clearly see, just because you are cradled with it doesn't mean you automatically get it.
Right.
Because they do have to train it.
Yep. They have to
the-
bond with it.
They have to bond with it. Her Rhaenyra's son, like, barely has control of his. They're still coaching him through it. So there's that aspect of it. And then there's also the cases where you can pick one up later on in life. Probably through more of a organic bonding with it, it seems
Right.
like. So I don't think you're gonna like be able to train Vanguard, be like, you're gonna be mine now. It's like, no, it's just gonna be a natural thing that you kind of have with the dragon and it with you. So there could be dragons on there that never like latched on to who they should have.
Yeah.
I would like to think that Aemon had a dragon. Did they know whether it just didn't hatch or he just didn't bond with it?
I don't know that they I don't know that they
They just
even
kind of said
mentioned
like,
it.
"You
He
suck.
didn't
Here's
have
a
one.
pig.
Yeah.
You don't have one."
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So there's some details there that it's open ended for sure.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
be I'm gonna say that Alaris has something to do with getting Vagar. He seems like the dude to do that deed. I
Right.
don't know who else would be doing it. The other people that would be going after it are children, so I think that
Hmm.
that's gonna be a play for him. We really need to figure out what I was looking because they just call him Clubfoot in the books. So there's
Who?
no beetle mention,
Oh,
Laris. There's no so I don't know if they made that up for the show. I dig it, whatever's going on there. But yeah, my
Clubfoot.
bet is that I don't know. They steal I have no idea how they get him, but it's gotta be a plot from him, right, in some fashion.
Yeah. And I also it's interesting how Rhaenyra's children are named. It's like Jace, Joffrey, um, and Allison has a point. Like those aren't very Targaryen names,
Right.
for whatever reason. Whereas like hers have Targaryen names naturally. And it's not even like a Valerian names either. Like that's the weird thing. Like they're kind of named like Lannisters.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm
Yeah.
not sure what's going on there.
Yeah, I don't know.
Basically, they're Hightower names,
it
or
it
not.
it gave
Sorry,
me
strong names.
that's exactly what I thought. It gave me vibes because she does get irritated with him for naming him Joffrey. Like, she's like, "You
Hmm.
don't think to ask me about my son's name?" He's
Yeah.
like, "Well, it's my son too." And I
And she's
also
like,
really,
"You're
really
not bleeding."
appreciated the blood trail in that scene
Yes.
too, where she was, like, bleeding all the way down the hallway.
And
Little
Cole was
little
sitting at the door and
yeah,
facing away from them, like being real snooty, just like, "I'm not
yeah,
even gonna look at you."
right, yeah. Dude fell hard, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, lots of serious details when it comes to just like childbirth, post childbirth. Like I guess Rhaenyra is not breastfeeding, like unless more time passed there. I don't think so. I think it's just like she was just not gonna do that, so they're just trying to make it stop.
Yeah.
Um,
I So they always bring up in the show, and they did it in the original series too. They talk about wet nurses a lot. Is that a nurse that can breastfeed? I believe that's what a wet nurse is.
oh,
I I,
perhaps.
I could be wrong. I might just be
Oh, that
making that
makes
up in my
sense.
head.
The
So
the the royalty might not breastfeed.
right,
That
I
might
don't
be
think they
left to
do.
the nurse, like the help.
And how that works exactly, not sure. Like those nurses would had to have had a baby at some point. I would imagine, right?
Um,
Like
it's weird. Technically, I talk about this with my wife from time to time. Like just being around children can like make it happen.
cause it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy how their bodies work like that. So, or I mean, maybe like to be a valid wet nurse, like you used to have a baby at the same time.
Right.
I
Yeah.
could see them being that like, well, Queen's about to have a baby, so one of you four or half two of you four need to get pregnant ASAP and have a baby at the same time.
Right.
So no, that makes sense why they're kind of like not embracing the breastfeeding. They're just kind of like trying to make it stop because
Yeah.
once the milk dries up, it'll be better. So yeah, that makes sense that there would be
Yeah, I
wet
think
nurses.
I'm almost certain
Sounds right.
that's what a wet nurse is because I think Oberyn said something about Elia feeding her kids of her own breasts and
Mm.
she wouldn't let the wet nurse touch them. So I think almost certainly I'm right on that. So yeah, yeah, I don't know where we were going with that, talking about
No, it's just
breastfeeding all of a sudden.
no, it's just like we get two child like a lot of details
Yeah,
in
for
that term.
sure.
Like the queen also very rarely makes Rhaenyra walk to her
Now,
chambers.
in her defense, because I am on her side,
Okay.
she asked for the baby, not for Rhaenyra.
Yeah, but you're not just
Rhaenyra
gonna.
just took it upon herself to bring the baby up there.
This is true, but I also, as Rhaenyra, would not trust Alicent. Like
Right. Yeah, true.
that's a bold thing not to trust her either. But at the same time, like Laenor could have taken the baby there, but I also think that's Rhaenyra just being like not letting her win, right? Like, fine, if you're gonna make me do this like terrible thing in the first place.
Right.
So like, but there's just so many like good liners like throughout, whether it was like her walking there, her and Laner's conversation, like you said earlier, fantastic.
Yeah, so good.
Um,
Yeah.
and the very the just the blow blows when Allison's like, keep trying, Laenor. Eventually, one of them
Yeah.
might look like you.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
it's just like wow. So yeah, it's just a lot of crazy details around there. And
Yeah,
we
she's
get two childbirths, and obviously you can't have two successful childbirths, let alone
not
one in one episode. So
never. Yeah.
the second one doesn't go so well.
Yeah, yeah. So that baby's breech, I think that's why she's in the position she is
Yeah.
there. But yeah, I don't know.
And
I'm excited
the doctor guy's just like, I've reached the limits of my abilities. It's
of
like,
my
what do you?
art, I think he
Yeah,
said.
of your
Yeah.
art. Like, get out of here, you doofus. Like,
Right. And he's so shocked looking too. Like this is never I'm sure this has never happened. He's never had a baby breach that he couldn't get out in this world. Like, come on. It's
yeah,
gotta
and
be like
he's treating it like it's a sport. Like there's some skill set. Like he's lacking the
right.
skill to
He's
make it happen.
lacking
It's
the
like
art. Yeah.
it's like, dude, you're like I think that's the show. Like he's kind of like a dipshit. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't have like the like magic hands that just like make the baby fall out.
Yeah.
And it's,
What's up with Damon ignoring the other daughter? Is it
oh,
because she
because
doesn't have a dragon?
I think because her dragon egg it didn't hatch.
Yeah, interesting.
So that's definitely a negative Damon trait, but I could see him being like, um, you need a dragon.
Yeah, for sure.
Damon's children must have dragons.
Right. Yeah, I'm curious to see moving forward what happens to Blackfire, which is the sword that Viserys has, the Valyrian steel sword.
Mm,
Who's going to wind up with that sword after his
probably
almost certain death in this next episode?
eldest son.
Eldest son it gets passed to, which would be
Aegon.
Aegon, unfortunately.
We all know what Aegon's gonna do with the sword. First thing he gets it, he's gonna
Right.
wank one off on the sword.
Yeah. Love it.
And we're gonna get the scene too.
Right. Oh, for sure. For sure. We'll get the scene. Why wouldn't we? It's HBO, right?
Yeah, the HBO episode that doesn't have a sex scene, we get a teenager wanking it out the window over the city, and then two birthing scenes.
Right.
So
Makes
there has
up
to be
for it.
there has to be something with like nudity and unpleasant
Unpleasantness in every episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
Cool.
I think that about wraps us. Did we miss anything? I can't think that we did.
Don't think so. The hand of the king and his son, like on either side of the door, like dying in the fire. Like
Yeah. Brutal.
that was
yeah.
Harwin. Absolutely brutal. And Laris, like you forget, like you're even I was sitting there. I'm like, I'm most certain, like that's his family.
Right.
But like
right.
you would not guess that if like you just started watching the show.
Well,
like,
I think, that even though they set it up as a power move for Alicent, right? To get Otto back in. It also is a big power move for him as well, because he is theoretically going to take over Harrenhal now, right? Because he is
he
the
gets Harrenhal.
last surviving son.
Yep.
So, major little finger vibes, man. He's got everything figured out, fighting all the battles all at once in his head, or whatever Littlefinger used to say. So
yeah, and that's and just more direct consolidation of what otherwise would just be outlying kingdoms.
Yeah.
Are like directly in the fray here, because we have Harrenhal there, we have the Eyrie for
right.
Daemon, right? So, what we otherwise thought would be like, oh yeah, Hall and King's Landing, where are they going to go? It's slowly kind of stepping out.
Yeah, definitely.
Of the King's Landing shell, and we have permanent residency in Dragonstone,
right?
With Rhaenyra moving there with the family.
Yeah.
So I think all the time in King's Landing is going to start to really kind of wither away.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, definitely. I think
Got to set up for the burning down of like half of it.
Right, right. That and you got to imagine a lot of the battles aren't going to take place in or around King's Landing, and
No.
they're going to take
Yeah.
place in other parts of the world. So curious to see what happens. There's a lot set up war wise, especially with the Triarchy. Like we could be seeing stuff across the Narrow Sea as well. We could make it to Dorne at some point. So there's a lot of different paths that can go to season 2. I don't think we're going to see. I would imagine we're going to see much of the Triarchy stuff in this season. I think they'll probably save that for season 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. I'm curious to see how much we expand moving into the second season as far as the world, like how much more of the world we start to see.
Game of Thrones expand quite a bit, so
Yeah, for sure.
I
Yeah.
imagine this will do the same.
Yeah, I mean, this show is doing ridiculously well. Let's not forget.
Yeah.
So this is an awesome first season for them. So
Yeah, I forgot to Google the most current numbers, but I think even episode 3 like wiped the floor over like
yeah.
Rings of Power too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I think it had 13 million viewers, which is yeah, I think that's what I saw. 13 million viewers, which is more. Yeah, they hit 10 million. Yeah, I think it keeps growing.
It keeps growing, which is never the case. Literally, I don't even think with Game of Thrones that it kept growing throughout the season. It's usually a big viewership in the first episode and then dropping off continuously until the finale, and then it goes back up.
Yeah, they
But
have a lull kind of there in the mid season all the time, and then
yeah,
the finale just gets everybody. And I'll make it a point. I'll always you have to remember that I'm pretty sure the HBO numbers are premiere numbers, like who
right,
watch it at 9 o'clock on
yeah,
Sunday, versus the best that Amazon can do is just say, "Hey, this many people watched it today."
right, right.
They probably do have like first hour metrics, but the issue is like this is why I think I want Disney Plus to do this. I want timed premieres of these series because it just works so well, and
Yeah,
it's just a better metric to say that 13 million people watched it 9 p.m. on a Sunday night or generally within that time block versus like we released it today, at like
yeah,
3 a.m.
right.
By noon, this many people watched it, which
Yeah,
is even an odd metric too, because we're talking about people that are watching these shows in the middle of the day. Like, no, like get everybody on the same plane. Like, I'm not gonna watch these shows before 7 p.m. in the day.
right, right.
I want to know how many people are watching it like at the premiere
At
date,
the
at the
premiere
premiere
day,
time
yeah,
in the evening,
yeah.
especially on a Sunday too. So that's just such a strong premiere time too.
For sure. Oh, yeah. It's
Like
gotta be the best. Yeah, that's
end
the
your
best.
weekend, end your
Right,
weekend like this,
right. Yeah, definitely.
because
Yeah, and I
no one's
think
got
that
grand plans at 9 p.m. on a Sunday night.
right. Yeah, true. Yeah, right. Yeah, and I think that, some shows how I feel about this. I like binge watching shows, but there are some shows, and Game of Thrones was one of them, that was much better watching it live, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Because they're
100%.
like, if you take spoilers for the original series here, if you don't wanna hear it, you can back out, but you take Jon Snow's death, like, we had to wait a year and a half to figure out that he didn't actually die and he came back. Maybe even longer than that because I think it was the 2nd or 3rd episode of that season that we found out. So, that stuff is lost when you're binge watching it, and you can just go
Yeah,
right next to that episode, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, I don't watch that many live shows. This is really it, you know what I mean? I'd rather just wait to binge it because most of the stuff I feel is better bingeable, but this is not one of those shows, and I have friends that are waiting for this to all come out. I'm like, "You really should just watch it. It's
just watch
good."
it.
Yeah, just watch it.
Um, yeah, and I also, I mean, this isn't even like tangible, but there's this like weird like 1% of me that's like technically there's a lot of people watching this like right now, like right now. Like it's
Right.
like when I'm watching Rings of Power, I could be the only person on the planet watching at that
Yeah.
very moment.
Right.
Meanwhile, like Game of Thrones, like boom, started at 9 o'clock. Like there are millions of people that are just
And
like
it
watching at the same time. And that's just
a
like cool.
and I think it was, like, either the it might have been the first or second episode. It actually crashed HBO Max, and like I
Mm,
couldn't get on it for like 10, 15 minutes. So that shows you how good the show. If it's crashing the if it's crashing the app, that
yeah.
shows you how good the show is. Probably.
I will say, Rings Power is getting better.
I
We're
hope
on
so.
episode 5, I think. So it should be getting better by episode 5.
Yeah, that's like a binge show for me. Like
Yeah, it's a
I
binge
just wait.
show, and I think not to talk about Rings of Power, but I think the way they're setting up the season is exactly like a Lord of the Rings movie. So like talking, walking.
Yeah,
Middle act, they're like teasing the conflict, and then third act is just going to be
it's
like
good.
balls to the wall, awesome.
Right.
So I think that's how this is kind of like arcing. So I'm like, oh, so it's basically one Lord of the Rings movie over the course of 8 hours.
Yeah. Is
Um,
it? Yeah. So 8 episodes. Is that how
eight
much?
episodes,
Okay.
but they're healthy like 1 hour, 5 minute episodes.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah.
So
And
definitely
season two? No season two.
season 2, yeah.
There is season two coming. Okay.
Amazon basically paid for like a few seasons out the gate with like a nice half B investment.
Yeah, I would like to see numbers wise because they spent a colossal amount of money on that series, did they not? Like an astronomical
No,
amount.
yeah. It was basically if you count rights, they paid like a quarter billion for the rights, and then it was another quarter billion for the first like 2 seasons.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
250 million a pop. So yeah, it's upward around like $500 million for the first 2 seasons, everything included.
Yeah. Yeah. I would like to see the numbers of House of the Dragon, how much they spent on
I'll look
this
them up
first season of
right
House of
after
the Dragon.
this, and we'll
Yeah.
talk about them. Well, as a preview, we will have a game Rings of Power versus House of the Dragon episode on Showboys. Probably after October, after both series have wrapped,
Yeah.
we will we'll break it down. So, Chad, you have to finish Rings of Power
Yes.
by the end of October. So,
That would have played a lot better when I was playing Elden Ring and I was like a little bit more interested in Lord of the Rings because
yeah,
typically outside of it, I'm like, dude, fucking boring, bro. Like, even
yeah,
after watching Game of Thrones and getting me into that highish fantasy, mid fantasy vibe, which I never was into even remotely,
right.
still can't get into the Lord of the Rings
That's
movies,
the
man.
difference. And I mean, I watched this called Shadiversity, and he kind of like breaks down this. He's like all into swords and like does like real swords, talks about them, how castles are built. I've shared his videos before, but like the first episode, he was looking at um, everything going on in the first episode of House of the Dragon, and he made comment of how like House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones in general is more realistic than most like movies and shows that are supposed to be of actual
Right.
medieval
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like the
Right.
way things are aesthetically and like how they design stuff, like it's technically more realistic than like movies that are supposed to be based on real life.
Yeah.
So that's one contrast with Rings of Power is Rings of Power is like pure high fantasy. Like you're basically, you're fully in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Nothing, there's no Dungeons and Dragons, or I always think of um Total War, Warhammer. Like it's all there for enjoyment purposes. Like there isn't
Right.
really anything requiring, and it's all just looks and aesthetics.
Yeah.
So that's the one like soft point that Rings of Power has, is it's like it's got that layer of high fantasy on it, whereas Game of Thrones is very much embedded in like a very gritty, realistic world with kind
Right.
of like real characters that just kind of have like problems. We get dragons in this bit. That's like
Yeah.
really high fantasy, but at the same time, the dragons are like
Very
pets.
yeah. And they're oddly realistic in the show as
Yeah.
well. You know what I mean? Even though they're not. But I
Lord of the
there's so
Rings, like in the
much.
Hobbit series, like Smaug, the dragon in the Hobbit series, like he talked and like he
Yeah.
was like a gorgeous, like high fantasy dragon. Like
Right.
that's not what dragons in Game of Thrones are.
Right. And I think that's what hooked me the most on Game of Thrones was the realism vibe that it had going
Yeah.
on. But I do really like a lot of stuff in Lord of the Rings, like who are
Oh yeah.
the like ring wraiths or whatever, the Black
Nazgul.
Knights. Yeah. They're awesome. There's bosses scattered all through Elden Ring that look just like those dudes. So
Can't get
you
away
know,
from it.
yeah, there's a lot you can't really. And yeah, there's a lot that I like there. It's just I think it's just the blandness of most of the there's like action in like 2 hours of the entire first trilogy, maybe even less than that, maybe an hour,
Yeah.
Most of
Yeah.
it's walking and
Talking.
yeah. So maybe
Cool.
I need to download Shadow of Mordor on the Steam Deck. Maybe that can kickstart my drive to watch this Rings of Power.
You should play go find the Third Age if it's playable on like current systems. Great RPG.
Yeah? I'll check it
Turn
out.
based like Final Fantasy RPG. Fantastic.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Fantastic. The Third Age. The only issue is like I don't know what it's playable on.
I mean,
It is a PlayStation 2 game.
okay, then it's playable on the Steam Deck. I can emulate it probably.
Good.
So,
I should look that up too. Cool. Well, we'll park it here. We'll save more of that for a later episode. Definitely looking forward to episode 7 of House of the Dragon. Like
yeah.
episode 7, like we are over the hump here. We are into the second half of the season. We are gearing up for basically the finale and how we're
Yeah.
gonna like close out this first season of otherwise something that's gonna stick around because it didn't
For sure.
flop. So
For
it's definitely
sure.
gonna fly. It's
Yeah.
definitely gonna fly.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll see you all next week, next Monday. Definitely tune in this Thursday for the Showboys podcast at 9 p.m. We'll be having some guests. It's been some stream team announcements. And I believe you guys will be talking about what top most favorited like PS2 games.
Yes. Yep.
That'll be fun. That'll be fun. I think there'll be a lot of overlap there, but I don't know. Every time I cross that topic, people pull some stuff out of the woodwork when
Yeah.
it comes to the PlayStation 2 in
For
terms of like
sure.
what they played. And like
Yeah,
everyone was just on their own planet back then.
Yeah. It just has such a massive I mean, it ran like when I did the Answer the Boys thing today, it was like over 12 years they were making that thing.
Bananas.
Like into 20 something ridiculous. Like
Oh yeah.
it's like
It basically
2012
overlapped
or
with
something.
PS3.
Yeah, it was absurd. So, yeah, it's just got a huge catalog of ridiculously good games as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Is there trash on it? Yeah, there's trash on every
for
console,
sure.
but there's a lot, possibly the best catalog of games of any console.
Nice. That'll be a good topic.
Yeah, man. I'm excited. And the other thing, sorry, I know we're trying to wrap up, but the other thing, like the sales number of the PS2 versus the Xbox, which is same time frame, it was a freaking slaughter fest, bro. 155 million units for the PlayStation 2, and it was like 30 something million for the Xbox, the original Xbox. I was like, damn, I did not realize it was that big of a slaughter fest back then.
Everyone had a PS2.
Yeah,
everyone that had an Xbox also had a PS2.
Right. True. Very true. Okay, sorry. Save it for Thursday.
Yeah, save it for Thursday. Other than that, we're out. Thank you again, and see you next week.